Now again, something right on there.
Okay.
All right, I'll try not to have any technical difficulties, although this mic is definitely some trouble. So hopefully everybody had a great Memorial Day. Couple of things. There's going to be a club survey that comes out, and so it's a fill in the bubble type of thing. Unless you want to spend some time writing some comments, people have that option as well. We're really trying to figure out, why are you in Rotary, and how can we make your experience better? So when you get that survey, I would really encourage you to please fill it out. I know that's annoying. We all get these emails and surveys, and we try to do everything we possibly can to ignore them. But if you would, and I'll challenge you again once it gets distributed to see, make sure that you've done your part. Also, those of you who were not here last week, we last year were a 100% giving club, which means that every member within our club donated at least $25 to the foundation. And on average as a club, we donated over $100 per person. So again, I want to give ourselves a round of applause for that. The foundation does many things, of course, globally as well as locally. And one of the things that we want to focus on next year is to see if we can do some district grants here locally. We're trying to bring some of this money back here locally. So if you have an idea for a district grant, please be thinking about that and bring it forward if you want to champion something like that. So with that, today we have one of our own who's going to be telling us her story at United Way. And Amber joined the United Way back in 2018. She became interim CEO and president back in 2020. And then she was appointed the CEO and president in 2021. And we're so lucky to have her. The United Way does such incredible things. So we're looking forward to have her come up here and tell us a little bit about what her day-to-day is like.
I'm going to take this off, so can you guys hear me okay? All right. Well, it's been a couple years, I think, since I've been up here. The last time I came and spoke, we talked a lot about Alice, and today we're still going to be talking about Alice, but we're going to be talking about Alice through the lens of community resiliency and specifically disasters. So as a refresher, who is Alice? Alice is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. These are households that do have an income. Most of them are working. There are some households that are on fixed income, so when we talk about our senior populations and individuals with disability, they're getting that Social Security and disability payments in. So these households are bringing dollars in, but they still cannot afford the basic needs. We're talking rent, utilities, transportation. We have to have IT now. There's got to be some sort of internet service. Childcare is another big expense. And Alice, we all know who they are. Many of you have already spoken to Alice today. You may be related to Alice. If you've gone and gotten coffee this morning through the drive-thru at Starbucks, you've already spoken to Alice. If you're getting an Amazon delivery today, Alice is coming to your front door. Alice earns above the federal poverty level, but again, not enough to make ends meet. And if you're not familiar with federal poverty level, it was set many, many years ago. And basically what they did was they took the average cost of basic foods that a person could get basic caloric nutrition from. And then they took that money and they multiplied it by the number of people in the household, and that's how they came up with federal poverty level. The FPL is standard across every state in the United States. It does not account for where you live and the cost of living in your area. So it's very outdated and it is not a true measure of poverty, whereas Alice is considered the truest measure of poverty right now. So in Alachua County, this is our snapshot of Alice as it is from our report that came out last year around this time. It used 2023 point-in-time data. You can see that the population here is 285,994 people. And when we look at Alice households, which is that last line, there's 28% who are ALICE. These are those individuals that are earning the income, but they're above federal poverty. And then we have 19% of households who are in poverty. So when we take those two numbers together, we get 47% of households in Alachua County fall below the ALICE threshold. So when we talk about below the ALICE threshold, it's ALICE and poverty combined, 47%. This is the ALICE Household Survival Budget. It's going to be very hard for you all to read, but this is on our website, and you can look at it. But I highlighted this bottom row down here. If you are 2 adults with 2 children in childcare, to afford the basics in Alachua County, you have to earn nearly $93,000 a year. If you are a single adult, 65 and older, that's a senior, you have to earn $38,000 a year to afford the basics. And you can go online and you can put in, there's an actual calculator where you can put your household makeup in there, and it will tell you if your household is above ALICE, if you are ALICE, or if you're poverty. So our research partner in this is United for ALICE. They are a national nonpartisan organization out of United Way of Northern New Jersey. So they started this research about 15 years ago with one county in New Jersey to understand the true cost of living. And when they completed their study, they were shocked to see how many households that were really struggling to make ends meet. And they brought this research to a United Way Worldwide conference. And the United Way in Florida said, we need this. And so we were one of the very first states to go to United Way of Northern New Jersey and say we want to do a statewide study for Florida. So we've been participating in this for over 12 years now, and we have data for our state, for every single county, and we're really proud of that. And we're using that data every day. We serve our communities. It allows us to see what the needs are, and then when we take our ALICE data and we combine it with 211, which is our 24/7 resource referral line, we can see, I can look at my 211 data, it updates every 24 hours. And so I can look at that data, compare it to ALICE, and I can kind of project and see where the needs are changing in our community over time, and we can try to get ahead of things before something devastating happens. So ALICE is now in over 40 states, which is great. We have an entire movement. We are actually working at the federal level to encourage Congress to adopt ALICE and get rid of federal poverty level, because we need to make that change at the federal level in order to benefit the local level, right? We've got to be able to get assistance to our households that are in need. So April 30th, we got a brand new tracker. This is our ALICE Disaster Assistance Tracker. And what this does is this takes our ALICE data and it also marries it with FEMA disaster assistance data. So now we can see who's applied for disaster assistance, where, and whether or not these are ALICE households, if they're households in poverty, or if they're above the ALICE threshold. It helps us to see gaps. And it's really, really exciting data. It was done in partnership with Violink, which is an organization out of Louisiana that is very familiar with disaster. And they helped to take this data and put it together for us in this tracker. So what it does is it takes, like I said, the FEMA's Individuals in Household Program. That's the IHP program. So whenever there's a federally declared disaster that comes out, everyone will start getting messaging to apply for FEMA disaster assistance. That's what this is. So when we have hurricanes that come through the area and is federally declared, households can apply for that assistance. The tracker maps the storm, so we can see where the storm made impact and where it traveled. And it does it for multiple storms. So it could be a fire, it could be a hurricane. As long as it's federally declared, it will track that. And this data goes back to 2010. So we can look at the data by year, we can look at it by specific storm, and then we can see, like I said, who applied, why they got denied, and then what the average payment was. And the ALICE data is updated every year, and the FEMA data is updated every week. So it's pretty close to as real time as we can get. So what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the tracker. This is the map for Hurricane Helene, and you can see that bright blue and kind of the next brighter blue, that's the Big Bend area. So that's kind of like Levy, Dixie, Taylor counties. That's where Helene made landfall, and then it tracked up through Georgia into the Carolinas and into the mountain region. And we can see over here in the box that over $1.5 billion of disaster assistance was applied for. When we look at our 6-county region, so our United Way serves Alachua, Bradford, Dixie, Gilchrist, Levy, and Union, we can see that almost $31 million of disaster assistance was applied for in this area. When we look at Alachua County specifically, that's that little black call-out box there. We have over 8,000 applicants for disaster assistance from Helene in this community alone. And then we can go down in the tracker and we can see, well, who got assistance, and if they were denied, why. So the first chart that you're seeing of the blue and the yellows together, those are households that are below the ALICE threshold compared to households above. And then you'll see where the two pie charts to the right are broken down. The blue is below ALICE threshold, and the yellow gold is above ALICE threshold. So when we look at the ALICE one, out of all of those applications, 40% were approved for assistance. And then for the households that are above the ALICE threshold, only, I think it was 21% were approved. And we can see what the average cost of what the assistance was that they received. So for ALICE, they received approximately $2,700 in disaster assistance. So if a hurricane comes through and you had a tree fall on your roof, smash your roof in, and you're filing for disaster assistance, you're getting about $3,700. That's probably not going to replace your roof. And so we know right then and there that there's going to be a gap in your recovery, because if you don't have homeowners insurance, then you're fully out of pocket on a lot of these expenses. And the other thing that we can see in this smaller blue chart, I know it's hard to read up here, that's the reasons for denial. So some of the applicants were denied because they have insurance, right? So this program is designed not to duplicate benefits. So if your insurance is going to step in and cover this, then you're not going to get the disaster assistance because you're taken care of, and that assistance is going to go to somebody else who needs it. So that's okay if you got denied because you had insurance. That doesn't mean you still don't have unmet needs, though. And then for some of the other reasons, we're seeing in our geographic region, a lot of people are being denied because they didn't have eligible damages, or they withdrew their application or didn't respond to the application. And when we talk to our clients, they're like, well, I got denied. Well, let's look at why you got denied. And what we're seeing is a lot of times people are being denied assistance because they missed one piece of information in their application. And they don't read the entire denial letter. They read, "You're sorry, we're denying you," and then they stop. And if they read a little further down, it'll tell them why, and they can file an appeal with FEMA. And it's a few extra steps, but if you file that appeal, a lot of times they're getting the approval and they're getting that assistance. So what we're seeing is there's an education gap in our communities of understanding what FEMA assistance covers, what happens if you get a denial, what information do you need to have ready to file your FEMA application. And then also, where's that information coming from? Because one of the other barriers that we've recognized, especially in our rural communities, is there's a distrust of government. And so they're ignoring FEMA, or they're not answering the phone call, because when FEMA calls you, it's a Washington, D.C. number, and everybody thinks it's spam. So they're not answering. And so we're working on communications right now that we can put out to help maybe warm individuals up to being receptive of FEMA information so that they will apply and take advantage of the benefits that they can get. And then the other thing the tracker will show you is what types of assistance are provided. So you'll see the three bar charts here. The top one is those households that are above the ALICE threshold. In the center is our ALICE population, and then the bottom bar chart is those that are in poverty. And this light gray box, that stands for other needs assistance. So the majority of people that are requesting FEMA disaster assistance are requesting it for other needs, which include childcare, or fixing a car, or getting a prescription. These are all part of the ALICE household survival budget, which is very interesting to us. When you look at the gold color, that's personal property. So they're requesting assistance to help personal property. The lighter blue is home repairs, and then the darker blue is rent assistance. So that's the type of requests that are coming in. So we're looking at that data and saying, all right, other needs. Well, what can we do in that realm? What programs and services do we have in our communities that can assist with prescriptions? Or if we don't have programs and services, how do we start one? So that way we can help fill in some of these gaps when the assistance just isn't enough. So we're using the ALICE disaster tracker to help us better plan and prepare for disasters, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We know we're going to have hurricanes. We know we can have fires. We can have flooding in our area. There's several areas over this weekend that had gotten flooding and had gotten tree damage, right? Those aren't federally declared, so those individuals that were impacted are not going to be eligible for this type of assistance. But can we build systems to help outside of the federally declared disasters? And what does that look like? And what do those needs look like? So some of the work that we do out of United Way is we serve as a lead agency or fiscal agent for groups that are community organizations active in disasters, so those are COADs, and then long-term recovery groups, which are called LTRG, so COAD, LTRG. These are a national model, and what these groups do is they bring together emergency services, they bring together other government, they bring together nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and the business community. Anyone that is serving in the disaster realm. So if you own a business and you know that you're going to donate lumber after a hurricane comes through, you should be a part of your COAD LTRG. If you're a faith-based organization and you're going to open up an emergency shelter, or maybe you're providing clothing, you should be part of the COAD LTRG. We started one in Dixie, Gilchrist, and Levy County right after Idalia came through. It's called the Tri-County Disaster Assistance Group. We meet every month as a general group, and then we have an unmet needs committee that meets every other week. And in those meetings, we go over cases that are brought to us for those unmet needs. So we still have clients that are recovering from Idalia. We've got clients that are coming in that have been impacted by Helene and Milton. And so we're listening to those cases and we're trying to understand, okay, how can we complete their recovery? So we're paying for roofs, we're covering the cost of, back in April, we did actually bought out a lot of FEMA trailers. So when someone's displaced, FEMA will open up the housing program and they will deploy either an RV or a mobile home, and the individual can live in there for either a short period of time if their home is able to be repaired quickly and they can move back in the home, or in cases where that person can't move back in, they can live there. I think it's for like a year and a half, and then FEMA will give them the opportunity to purchase that unit. And depending on whether it's an RV or a mobile home, it could be up to $3,500, $5,000. Sometimes these households don't have that money if they're on a fixed income. And so we, through the long-term recovery group, we're able to hear those cases, and then we can pay the costs for those mobile homes and RVs so that person has permanent housing. So we have several households that we've purchased their homes in Cedar Key, Dixie County, and that they want to live there full time now. And they like their RV, and they know when the next hurricane comes, they can hire someone to tow it out of there, and then they can go back home when everything's passed. Alachua County has a COAD LTRG. The lead for that is the Alachua County, well, it's emergency management. and Helen Warren, who's a member of our Rotary, she was the past chair. There's a couple new chairs now. We're getting ready to kick off their unmet needs, and we're the fiscal agent for that. So we help bring grant dollars into the community too to help serve clients here in this county. And then tomorrow we're launching one in Bradford and Union. So that'll be a joint COAD LTRG group for those two counties because they share services. So we're convening and mobilizing those communities to come together so we can plan and prepare and then respond when we have our next disaster. We also do unmet needs assessments. We have one live on our website now for the Tri-County area over there on the west side of our service area, and you know, it ebbs and flows in waves, but we've had over 100 responses on that one, and we follow up with them to find out what they need and how we can assist them. We're also venturing into disaster case management. So one of the big gaps that we saw in our as we're responding to hurricanes, but also through the disaster assistance tracker, is there is no disaster case management ongoing in any of our communities. What happens is a disaster hits, and then the state will open up an RFP, which is a request for proposals, about a year after the disaster, and they will contract with a nonprofit or another entity to come into the area to do disaster case management. And that's a gap. If you've been affected by a storm and you're waiting a year to a year and a half to get a disaster case manager, what's been happening to you for that year to year and a half? The other thing is, what we found with this storm, specifically Helene, there are 8 disaster case managers covering 17 counties. So we have to share 8 disaster case managers across all those counties, and so it's taking a really long time to get cases presented to our group. So we were fortunate, we partnered with the Red Cross, and they gave us some grant funding, and we have just hired our first, it's a part-time disaster case manager for the Tri-County area, to see how that pilot goes, and then we're gonna look at seeing if we can get some more, and then how can we make that a long-term thing where we always have at least one person on staff that can do disaster case management, so we don't have to wait a year and a half to get that program up and going. And then we also work to provide funding for unmet needs. So through the United Way Network, we've got a lot of partnerships with a lot of organizations and businesses. They will funnel dollars to us because they know that we're gonna do a bang-up job, brag about us, do a great job, and we take those dollars and we put them into unmet needs. So again, we're helping to pay for roof repairs, we're helping to pay for ramps and steps for people's mobile homes. We are paying for a year's worth of homeowners insurance and flood insurance for some of these households so that they're covered. And this is one of the recent things that we did. We went out there, was it a week, 2 weeks? We took some of our funding and we purchased a trailer for the Cedar Key Food Pantry. So everyone sees Cedar Key on the Weather Channel when we have a hurricane, and Jim Cantori will go there and stand up in the UF building, the IFAS building, or out there and do his thing. And they're all over the news, and then about 6 months later, they kind of fall off and nobody's paying attention anymore. Well, they still don't have a grocery store on the island. So residents there are having to drive inland quite a ways to get access to food. And the Cedar Key Food Pantry, we met with them to kind of ask, what's going on? How are you guys doing? And they said, well, we're kind of struggling because our volunteers are using their personal vehicles. They're driving to Gainesville to go to the food bank to load up the food, and then they're driving it all the way back to Cedar Key, and it limits how much we can get, and it prohibits us from getting a lot of the perishable food items because it's going to be in the car for a long time. So we asked them, well, what could help? And they said, we would really love to have a trailer that is refrigerated, that we can tow with a truck, so we can go in and pick up food and bring it back, but also have it in times of disaster, so they don't have to close the food pantry, because the pantry is, when you drive into the island, it's kind of off there on the right, kind of in that like marshy, brackish area. They're on higher ground, but storm surge does not care. It will come 15, 20 feet into the land and wash everything out. So this trailer is allowing them to take food and put it in the trailer and drive it onto the island as they're recovering. So they have a really cool evacuation plan. Their little food pantry is down here on the bottom right. It used to be an old motel. And each room in the motel is a different department for food. So one room is cold storage, it's refrigerated foods, and you have another that's nothing but deep freezers filled with meats, and then another one is their dry goods. They do produce and everything. They already have agreements with the children's table, which is in Bronson. They will load those freezers and everything up, and they will flatbed trailer them to Bronson and plug them in so they don't lose any food. They'll do this before the storm. And then they're going to use that trailer to load up with food and drive it to the island. When the island is closed to everybody else, they can get on and still distribute food. So the food pantry won't have to stop their process. They are also using that for overflow. So when the USDA shows up with a truck full of food, they no longer have to say no because they don't have room in the refrigerator. They will plug that truck in and turn the freezer on, and they will put everything in there, and they will keep it cold. They don't have to turn anything away. So it was really cool. They took us on a little parade around town and a little ribbon cutting at the chamber. It was really, really fun. Okay, so what does 2026 hurricane season look like? So NOAA just released their predictions last week. They're saying that we're going to have about 8 to 14 storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 major. The thing with that is nobody knows where they're going to land, right? We won't know until the season starts. So now is the time to prepare. Make sure that you're taking care of your households, that you're communicating to your friends and family members that they need to prepare. If they're not sure what to do, the state of Florida has really great resources. There's the Florida Disaster, and that will walk you through how you can prepare your kit. We have these little magnets on your table. The QR code, if you scan that, that takes you to Alert Florida. You can put your zip code in and it will sign you up for your emergency alerts for your county. So if you sign up for Alachua County, you will get alerts from Alachua County when there's a storm. If they tell you to evacuate, evacuate. We don't have to worry about that so much here in Gainesville, but our coastal communities need to evacuate when they say to do that. And then our 211 line, because we are up and running and can help connect people to resources before, during, and after a storm. And this is the QR code to look at the Florida, our disaster tracker. So if you want to go on there and play around with it and look at past storms and see where things have hit and where they haven't, you can definitely do that. And then I just did a podcast last week with WUFT. That's aired Sunday morning, and now it's live on their website. And it's myself and Dr. Stephanie Hoops, who is the science behind the ALICE data. And we talk a lot about the disaster tracker in ALICE if you want to learn more about that. Well, that's pretty much it, you guys. Did my job. This is like the first. Oh, dang it. I got a question.
I got a question.
Hello? I'm sorry, I really don't have a question. I just have a comment that the more I hang out at this group, the more impressed I am with the people here. So you're very impressive, and I'm glad to be associated with you.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
You're not going to get away with this. You got to have a question. If he doesn't have a question, I do have a question. So United Way, you do a fantastic job, but just a colleague in a nonprofit, it is crazy. From funding to, so walk us through that, because we know there are great nonprofit that are literally getting out of business because they don't have funding. So walk us through this great work that you do, in particular the funding area.
That's a loaded question. I think just, it goes back to, I'm going to fall back on ALICE and the state of our economy right now. Everybody is feeling pressure. And when you start feeling pressure, you have to make cuts. Everybody's making cuts to their budgets, and a lot of times the first cuts are going to be those nonprofit donations. A lot of companies, they start there as well. It's cutting your donations and cutting marketing and communications. I think those are the two things that are usually on the chopping block for just about any business or individual. So, you know, my job really is to be creative for our organization, and diversification of your revenue streams is the biggest priority. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're an organization that lives on grants, especially federal grants and state grants, you need to think of some alternative strategies right now, because there's just a lot happening at the federal level, and I think that's kind of what's hitting a lot of organizations. But, you know, we're just like everybody else. We're feeling it. We're definitely struggling. All I can say is tell your stories, tell them well, so people understand what you do, and always be thinking about where you can grow and diversify that revenue. Because if you've got all your money in one area, that's not going to end well. So.
Okay, we can do one more, but we are running very short on time, Scott.
Just a quick question. You mentioned that the United Way community is lobbying in Washington to have the ALICE standards adopted. What's that look like?
Yeah, so we're still trying to get traction, so that's taking us a while. We're having those conversations wherever we can with our state senators and our state representatives. We go to Washington, D.C. every summer, too. We have a great public policy committee for the entire network at the national level, and then here at the state level, I actually sit on our state public policy committee. So I meet pretty regularly with our representatives, and my job really is to be a resource. So I'm going to give them the data and let them know, hey, here's what we're seeing in our rural communities and what we're seeing, you know, in Gainesville, and here's where the pressure points are. So we're pushing them to speak ALICE and use ALICE, and it's happening, right? We're seeing that with our Florida Chamber Foundation. They've included ALICE now on their data that they're using. Our local community foundation here has incorporated ALICE data into their data repository. I think it's called My Sidewalk. So, you know, everyone's picking up on it, and we're just going to keep pushing on, and someday we'll get there.
Amber, your passion for the organization is obvious, and thank you for all that you do for the vulnerable in our community and surrounding area. You're an amazing human being, so thank you again for the presentation here today. And in your honor, we're making a donation to the foundation as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Deborah and Ryan and Martha for all that they do for the Rotary Exchange. So thank you very much for everything that you do. We really appreciate you. And, you know, I think giving people a hand up, not a handout, is the way forward. That's what Hugh Jackman says. We certainly think of you that way, Amber. You are there to give people a hand up. And so we really appreciate you all for that.
I said that last week.
So with that, I am going to read the winning coupon, or the winning lottery ticket. It is 004. That's 004. And next week's program is Colin Whitlock, The Power of Local Storytelling. Yeah. What's that? Oh, Ben? Nice. And so we're going to end with the four-way test. So if we would all stand.
Got it.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned. Thank you for being here.
I need to go that way.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.
I'm trying to find the doggone thing.
That's right. I just was there a second ago.
Oh, there it is.